Hello, everyone. This is Bentley out in Kent, Washington, and I want to do a couple of updates plus some new fish that have entered the house. And we're going to start with this guy right here. This is an electric blue Acara, who's crazy camera shy. It's like the second he realizes I'm pointing some giant black box at him, he's running away and hiding. Um, but this guy came as a rehome along with a couple of other fish recently. I've done a few other rehomes. I'm kind of a big softie. I do a lot of rehomes. Um, But this fish is a pretty common cichlid. They're actually pretty peaceful when you tend to have just a solo one of them. They get along pretty well in community tanks. This guy here is, I would say, about 5.5 inches, very thick bodied. They don't really get much more than about 6 inches in captivity. Um, but they're very popular as a community fish in some rainbow tanks just because they have that super bright blue, that electric blue coloring, which you don't really see in rainbow fish. You'll see like the darker blues like on the turquoise rainbows, and you'll see kind of a powdery blue in something like a kamaka. And the closest you're going to get to that blue is going to be something like a dwarf neon rainbow or some of the goldie eye species. But those guys are just, they're so unique, they're so bright, and they're also very personable. This particular fish, as I try to pan away, hoping that he'll come out and actually show himself some more, but he's too smart for that. This guy is spoiled like crazy. So he made it through our quarantine, came into the tank. He was quarantined for about 3 weeks. Um, and my roommate's got him to a point now where he just eats from my roommate's fingers. Uh, safely, of course, but like he'll come all the way to the top of the water and pick up flake directly from my roommate's fingers. He's such a spoiled boy. As we cut to this other shot, you can see the Akara is going to be in the upper right. You can see him just kind of trolling around over toward the tiger lotus. Realizes as I'm kind of farther back, hoping I get some shots. Realizes, oh, that silly camera thing's pointing at me again. It's time to hide in the tiger lotus. But also, I just kind of wanted to take kind of a farther back shot of what I could with the glare coming in from my windows of the community tank here. Now that we've got the upgraded camera, we just get some much better views of some of the fish, some of the plants as I go through some of our projects. Now, the next tank that's coming up is something I would normally not do, but I did it as a rehome for a friend. So some of you are going to know what these are right away. If it's not obvious, these are Shellies. These are Neolamprologus multifasciatus, sometimes just called multis. They're a Lake Tanganyikan cichlid. And as you can tell, they live in shells. They're a very small dwarf cichlid. The males really only get to like 1.5 to 2 inches tops. You can see the few adults that are here. The females don't really get more than an inch. I mean, they're very small. They're peaceful with each other. They don't really need very tall tanks. They just like a footprint. They like lots of sand, very high pH. This is a mix of pool filter sand and a bunch of aragonite sand. So something you would normally use in salt water to help raise and buffer the pH. And there's some crushed coral in there too, just to help them out, plus all the shells. And you can see even the teeny tiny babies zipping around in there. Um, and I rehomed all these fish just because my friend has had some family medical issues, and she was having a heck of a time finding a home for them, and she really didn't want to just be like take them to a store or flush them or something. And so I was going to be buying this tank to grow plants out in, and I just told her, I was like, hey, if hang out of the tank for a couple of weeks. If you can't find a person, um, I'll just adopt them if you're willing to do that. I'll give them a home and eventually I'll find somebody who really loves Shellies and I'll get them to them. Um, so now I have Shellies, and you can actually see that piece of Scotch tape. What my friend used to do was use the Scotch tape as markers for their water changes. So you can see that one there's at like 50%. There's a higher one up there just for doing a very small water change, and then the one way low is for like the I'm gonna change all of it kind of water change. But anyway, these guys are new. They're fun. They got that big bright blue eye, a little bit of yellow in their fins. Pretty cool fish. So before I showed you the like 40 breeder that it is a plant tank, as you will undoubtedly notice, My whole army of Cochu tetras is in this tank now. There's about 75 of them. Plus, there's a male Apistogramma huascar and some Florida flagfish. Now, they have all been temporarily rehomed into this tank uh, because I have a new project coming up. You'll get a sneak peek at that in a little bit. And basically, where their tank used to be, which was meant to be as a kind of a holder while I was figuring some things out and growing kind of a project. Um, I needed that space for the upcoming project that you'll get a sneak peek at in a little bit. So let's now that we've got better camera. Also, two, they're up a little higher off the ground, so it's a little easier to take good shots of them. You can see the biggest group back there is kind of sitting. There's a lot of flow in this tank because it's running a pair of filters. So this has an AquaClear 110 on it, as well as a Fluval 406. So this is actually like really filtered, but that's just to make sure because there's a lot of bioload. We're talking, basically 80 fish in a 40 gallon. And I mean, there's a lot of plants and stuff, but we want to make sure that we're handling that bio load. And again, this is kind of a temporary home. They'll probably be here for a few months. But you can see now that we got them up high, that blue color I've been talking about in the past in these Cochu tetras is just outstanding. And then the Episto has been a little pissed. He hasn't had as much stuff to hide in. Like he's got all these plants, but he doesn't have himself like a cave or a sponge, which is what he really wants. So every once in a while, he'll just kind of chill. And he's also like, I swear every cichlid I've ever owned is camera shy. Um, and I put some notes here. You can see these are the crypt flamingo, sometimes called pink flamingo. It's bright pink, kind of hard to miss. And then the green, super dense leaf thing is called Synaganthus. I'm really bad at pronouncing that. Belem, also known as Tonina Belem. That's a super hard to keep plant um, that I'm trying out for some fun. But basically, it requires highlight. It requires CO2. You have to have pretty soft water. It's kind of a nightmare scenario to keep. But I'm a crazy person and I'm going to try keeping it in this plant tank because I'm pushing CO2. I've got a mix of Fluval stratum, which is going to help buffer the pH down a touch, and I have some Echo Complete in there. We are mineralizing the water a little bit to help deal. Plus, you got CO2 to help stabilize the pH so it doesn't just crash. But you can see just that army of Cochu tetras swimming around there. And then we'll kind of dive in. I've listed some stuff down on the screen of some of the names of some of these plants, but I'm going to highlight a few of those in an upcoming shot. And you can just see all this, like on the right hand side, like all of that Alternanthera renekii, which will get thinned out here pretty soon. So from the top, you can see the Tonina Belem. You can see that beautiful pink flamingo color there. And then to the right, as we pan, that is the Hygrophila carambosa parawatota. This here is Bacopa Yellow Flame. So normal Bacopa is usually really bright green, where you can see this Bacopa's got this beautiful kind of dusky yellow tone to it. I really like that a lot more, just because I love those dusky yellow tones. This here is Pogostemon stellatus. So it's sometimes known as Astralis stellata, which is not correct. And this was me literally trying to see like how well the camera picks up through that much water movement off of that 406. Now this plant's really cool. This is a Ludwigia inclinata species called Crystal. And if you look down this big stem on the left, every one of those little kind of like clover looking things is actually a child plant just starting to grow. And then behind that, that really fine leaf, kind of spiky, is Rotala annie. These are teeny tiny stems right now. I had it growing pretty well in another tank, that 29 gallon project I've shown you several times. But my stupid Siamese algae eaters started, after they had cleaned out kind of all the hair algae, started tearing at, because it's a very fine leaf, they started eating it all the way except the very tips. So I pulled it all out, and I'd had it floating in this tank temporarily because the stems were so small that the good parts of them that weren't dying out were so small I couldn't plant them yet. So he's letting them kind of soak up the nutrients in the water because they're a stem plant, they're a water column feeder, and then letting them soak up that CO2. and I'm starting to get it. And you can see more of it floating here as I'm waiting to get it just long enough so I can plant it. And then this here is some cool Pogostemons. The first one we're going to look at, which is up front, is called Heidelberg. And then behind that is some Pogostemon erectus. And you can see in the erectus, there's some hair algae. That's part of why the Florida flagfish are in here. By the time you actually see this video, that stuff is gone. And they have cleaned house in there. But the Heidelberg there is kind of like Pogostemon octopus, only much finer leaves. And it has a really cool, um, almost kind of like quartzy white color on the underside of the leaf. So if you get it kind of moving in high water movement, you would see that more. It's very pretty. And then this right here is that Pogostemon stellatus. You can see like in the smaller child plant to the side, the red and orange tones starting to come in. And then we whip around here. Here's some really cool stuff. So we have Pogostemon Kimberly, which is right there on the right. To the left of that is some Ludwigia super red. There's a few more stems of it just below that. Then we're going to kind of tilt a little bit here. And inside all the rosifolia there, or the Rennekii, is some Ludwigia glandulosa. This stuff, eventually, once it grows out, I got this from a guy online who was doing some big trims. And once it starts to grow out, it gets like an almost purple color. It's so dark, which it'll be really cool. It basically requires CO2 in order to get that kind of color and really do well. Same with the Ludwigia super red and like the Pogostemon Kimberly. Um, there's some of those plants that really just without CO2 they're not going to do well. Now here's the fun part. You can see my tweezers here for some perspective. This is a sneak peek of a project that's coming up. This is a 140 gallon acrylic. This is the same day we got it up and running, so the water is really cloudy when we're throwing the substrate in. Just wait. You're going to see some really cool stuff on this. Thanks for watching.